Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the third session of Community of a New Future, a series of Creative Hubs conversation. Thank you for your patience. My name is Florence Lambert, and I am the Head of Arts and Creative Industry at the British Council based in Kuala Lumpur. Thank you for attending the forum, and I hope that you will be inspired by our speakers today. Before we start, I would like to remind the audience of our house rules. Cameras and mics will be automatically turned off. Please type your question in the chat box. Use the raise hand function for questions during Q&A. The section will be video recorded and streamed live on Adobo Magazine's Facebook. By attending the session, you acknowledge that your image and comments will be recorded, and the recording will be shared with our media partners for rebroadcasting post-event. If you do not consent to this, you may switch off your camera or kindly exit the call, and you may observe this session on Facebook Live. The link is on the chat. We will be locking the room shortly. If you get disconnected from Zoom, you can still follow the session at Adobo Magazine's Facebook Live. Lastly, let's be respectful of each other during the conversations. We encourage you to share our initiatives and content with your communities. So don't forget to use the hashtag Creative Hubs for Good and Culture Connects Us, and follow the media channel of your choice. The info is on your screen right now. I would like to also acknowledge and thank our partners, Thames International, Borneo Laboratory, DTI DCP, Creative Cardiff, and our media partners, Adobo Magazine, Whiteboard Journal, and Kakiseni. So in May and June, we hosted 2 conversations for Creative Hubs. The first session was about inspiring resilience, and we learned that Hubs has responded to the crisis with resilience, and we shared many of their initiatives. Mental health, well-being, and professional support were at the core of the response, and we highlighted the challenges of digital engagement and that the transformation is difficult for both the cultural sector and its audiences. The second session was about lesson on digital transformation. Digital transformation is not an option, but it's a must. Data is increasingly becoming critical to sustainability, and collaborations are necessary. If you'd like to know more about these sessions, please visit the links to our media partners article on our chat. So today's session is about reimagining the future, and I would like to do a quick poll and ask you, how do you feel about the future? Are you excited? Are you optimistic, unsure, anxious, scared, or even pessimistic? So let me just have a look at your response right now. It seems that so far, we have a majority of people who are pretty optimistic at 44% right now, and 23% are a little bit unsure, and 15% are excited, and 18% are anxious. So overall, it's optimism that takes over, which is pretty good news. Thank you for that. So we are now ready to start the forum. As you can see on the agenda on the screen, we will start with 3 presentations on reimagining the future, data, and collaboration. Whilst this forum will not bring solutions to the complex issue Creative Hubs are facing today, we hope it will inspire you to imagine and create a more inclusive and sustainable future. To do this, we've called upon a diverse panel of creative practitioners who have agreed to share their initiatives, knowledge, and experience, and I'm grateful for their time and generosity. Caitlin Verstraete, Director, Arts and Creative Industry, East Asia at the British Council, will be moderating the panel discussion and will share some of British Council's initiatives and collaboration platforms. But we're also privileged to have British Council's Director Arts Network, Caroline Meeby, who will open the forum with a short welcoming address. Welcome, Caroline. Could we have Caroline?
Thank you very much. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Caroline.
Thank you very much, Florence. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I'm delighted to be here with you today. The British Council is the UK's cultural relations organisation, and in our arts work, we create links between the creative and cultural sectors worldwide. As we assess and contemplate the social and economic repercussions of the pandemic and start to reimagine the future, these links will be more important than ever. So how did you vote in the poll just now? When you thought about the future, were you excited, optimistic, unsure, anxious, scared, pessimistic, or a little bit of all of the above? Well, it was really good to see the majority of you were optimistic. That's really fantastic. Personally, I think all of those responses together is a completely rational response. This extraordinary year has brought the world's attention to the cracks in a frail system. Gender inequality, social and economic inequalities, racism, and the climate crisis are just some of the walls that divide us. What role will creative hubs have to do good and connect communities across these divides? This is what we're going to be exploring in the next few hours with our brilliant speakers. First, I wanted to share with you some extracts from things I've read recently, which highlight some of the feelings of anxiety and optimism in the arts sector as a response to COVID-19. A recent report by Dave O'Brien of the University of Edinburgh described how the crisis could exacerbate existing inequalities in the cultural sector in the UK. His report focuses on issues of equality and diversity in the cultural and creative industries. These industries are an economic success story from the UK, but far from being a meritocratic level playing field, Dr. O'Brien's data analysis showed that the creative and cultural industries are highly exclusive, to the detriment of those from lower income backgrounds, ethnic minorities, and women. His report makes anxious reading. He says that without radical intervention from the UK government, COVID-19 will unquestionably make these issues worse. There will be fewer cultural organisations, whether in the arts, in media, music, film, TV, publishing, or in museums. He says there will be fewer job and project opportunities. Competition for those opportunities will intensify, and the winners will be those who already have economic, social, and cultural resources. Quite pessimistic. But it is often quoted that in Mandarin, the word crisis is a combination of two characters, danger and opportunity. So with this thought in mind, and in the spirit of optimism, I would like to share with you some extracts of a statement published in April this year by the world's most significant global cultural networks, working together under the banner of the Culture 2030 Goal campaign. So they say, culture should be at the heart of the response to COVID-19. Culture brings inspiration, comfort, and hope into people's lives. Artists, creators, and cultural professionals, as well as organisations in the culture sector, have a fundamental role in promoting well-being and resilience in individuals and communities. They guarantee access to information, encourage awareness, tolerance, and build the capacities to imagine the societies of the future. Now more than ever, we need to recognise, incorporate, and support cultural concerns in our response to the crisis and planning for the recovery. We must also strengthen the global mindset and international cooperation that are critically needed, faced with the risk of closed borders and divisions in the international community. We have an opportunity to build back better, designing policies that allow culture to fulfill its role as the fourth pillar of sustainable development. Doing so will provide a more comprehensive frame to understand our world and make for stronger, more innovative, more tolerant, and more resilient communities tomorrow. Dr. O'Brien's anxiety and Culture 2030's optimism highlight the issues faced by cultural sectors all over the world, but also point us to the direction of a preferable, more inclusive and sustainable future, one where creative hubs can play a key part. The resilience and innovation and creativity of hubs has been great in Southeast Asia. And the UK and the rest of the world can learn from and with you. I'm a firm believer that collaboration, not competition, is the way forward. And I'm grateful to my colleagues and our esteemed partners and brilliant speakers for joining this forum as a platform that allows us to explore the future and ways that we can build back better together. I wish you all a great forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Caroline. We're so grateful you could be here with us today. And now I would like to introduce our three panelists and start the presentations. Our first panelist today is Wendy Teo from Kuching, Sarawak, Malaysia. Wendy is an architect and founder of Borneo Laboratory, a multidisciplinary hub in Borneo. She's also a visiting scholar in Fengchai University, Taiwan. During the lockdown, Wendy and her community ran several brilliant initiatives and conversations to rethink our world. Wendy, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. From here, maybe I can start from a simple introduction about what we do in borneolab. We are a multidisciplinary team with 4 pillars of focus in our production. Design and make, which we are fortunate enough to engage some visionary client for exciting venture. In order to have more breadth in our project, our curatorial exploration has connected us with a number of purpose-driven game changers around the region. With our research workshop, we make sure we can have the space to investigate in depth over the issue, methods, and processes that we are interested in. Over the last few years, we also realized a lot of knowledge has yet to be documented or analyzed properly and critically. So our publication segment serves as a faculty of documentation, which we have released 2 books officially over the last 3 years. Through this pandemic, we realized the relationship between our collective doing and our work is a reciprocal one. Any action we take into the world shall be processed with informed thinking and discussion. Therefore, every year, we dedicate ourselves to set out a 1-month uninterrupted in-house reading retreat. The purpose of our annual theme-based reading club is to learn or unlearn about our relative situation. Informed by the discussion from this faculty of learning, we can then adjust our role and action to be more relevant as a creative hub. In 2019, our theme was design thinking, in conjunction to our design and make workshop, which took place at the time. This year, with a theme of the new normal, we moved our reading club online to cope with the unprecedented lockdown situation. It was interesting to see the twist. This used to be an intimate section participated only by our in-house participants, had then turned into a reading club with information fed by 30+ participants from 8 different regions around the world. With a broad theme new normal as an umbrella, we discussed a wide spectrum of reference through book, articles, podcasts, films, artwork, or experiences listed in the recommended material list. It is fascinating to realize they are in fact global issue, pretending to be a local one. Pandemic, climate crisis, refugee, inequality, food scarcity.
Wendy?
Realize most of our issue we are facing respectively in different parts. Yes, yeah, sorry.
Sorry, we've just lost you a little bit. Carry on, sorry.
Okay. So we see exploiting ignorance as opportunities. This situation were being weaponized by nationalists toward an even more divisive future, which fuel their political agenda. It is worth thinking that if our currency system is already an ideal place to incubate the global narrative we need to cope with the global issue we have. With market becomes goal and solution, we condition our community to cope with the massification of our product and productivity model. At this point, our identity is now also a consumable set of commodity or spectacles. The efficacy of capitalistic system is now depending on how much we are willing to produce or consume the monolithic paradigm with currency like our time, our attendance, our attention, or even our free will. implied, glorified, and instituted by the system we are in, namely the mass media, education, political system, and market society. The monolithic paradigm culture tailors us into an ocean of aliveness. Trapped in the context of identity consumption, we are simply too exhausted to explore the solution to a question that is beyond our individual control. Through reviewing attempts in art, foodscape, infotech, or politics, we realize the urgency of global answer has been felt and attempted in the scale of individual to community. These game-changing attempts are trying to get us to be more conscious and holistic with our production, consumption, interaction within the social sphere. Some recent one has been facilitated with some technological advancement. So this reading club also set out the question for us as a creative hub ahead. How could we encourage our community to connect widely, think deeply, and also act daringly? And what kind of instruments are available for us to do so? Of course, there are some apparent challenges ahead, like self-sufficiency, horizontal leadership, community commitment, and how could a correspondence be explored holistically through participatory process. With this question in mind, we decided to rename our new space, which was previously known as Think and Think Supermarket due to the ownership to the Think family, into Think and Think. It is also a mind factory to populate the city with more thinkers. Informed by the research done from our reading club, we continue the exploration in a more experimental manner in our online design workshop, which was running in parallel. In this design workshop, which we focuses on rethinking public realm in the post-COVID-19 era, we engage a group of participants from a diverse background of urban design, architecture, human-computer interaction to work together. And we are going to share the link of our VR exhibition that we recently just put together. So from this experimental design workshop, we are looking at redesigning contact and circulation. So they are in compliance to the social distancing policy. This also further inspire us to proceed with rethinking public relation project, which will warm up the idea of Think and Think in October and November. There are 4 projects we are going to feature along this exploration. So the first one is the canvas of hope. So to inspire hope, we need to visualize hope. In this project, we encourage different walks of life to submit their story of hope to fill out the canvas in the city. So the second project is Wish Tree. So this omni-channel project will be collecting wishes online and offline. So the tree will grow through the wishes collected. And then the outdoor cinema. This project is an attempt to explore Kuching new content platform in the public spaces. And then the immersive theater. So this project is an attempt to redesign the space for theatrical use in the new normal. Meanwhile, we are also placing an edible garden at the rooftop of the building as a visual reminder of our collective desire to bring nature back to downtown Kuching. So only an hour ago, like we just received a good news that we got a fund to further building this project. So thank you so much for your time, and that's all for my sharing.
Thank you so much, Wendy, for this. Personally, I really enjoyed the reading club that encouraged our communities to connect widely, think deeply, and act daringly. You clearly demonstrate that we should not just rethink business models, but we need to rebuild a more inclusive, equal, and sustainable system, because as you said it beautifully, we now have a global economy, a global ecology, and global challenges, which have yet to develop a global narrative to deal with. So thank you very much, and congratulations on getting the funding, by the way.
Thank you. Thank you.
So I now would like to introduce our second speaker, Kenneth Bienas. Kenneth is a senior project officer at the Design Center of the Philippines and oversees its design promotion and creative industry initiatives. He has previously worked as a data analytics specialist for market research and insight consulting firms. And Kenneth provides research consultation and data literacy workshops to academics, local government units, and creative hubs. We've asked Kenneth to help us understand data culture, how to harvest useful data, and how it can be used for advocacy. Kenneth, the floor is yours.
All right. So, hi everyone. I'm Ken from the Design Center. Now, our presentation this afternoon will showcase how some data hubs and creative hubs in the Philippines and across the world uses creativity and data as a force for good to empower their communities. Just 3 points. So, first story is about bridging the gap through data literacy. So, in 2015, once upon a time, the Go Boston 2030 project has employed creative data literacy method to gather around 3,000 citizen ideas about the future of transportation. And instead of just hiring a data analyst to process it for them, they treated the analysis as an opportunity for community engagement where they invited leaders, policymakers, creatives, designers, citizens, and participants to actually work together as a team in making sense of the data, to prioritize best ideas, and to highlight new categories for consideration. Through this collaborative effort, the initiative has come up with actionable plans, aspirational targets, and policy ideas that the residents want them to achieve. So, data plays a vital role in not just only future proofing our organizations, but also our teams. Data today is portrayed as a currency of power that enables us to predict and as well as influence our next actions. It also keeps us and our organizations to remain relevant in this industry by using data not just only for fact based decision making, but also enabling ourselves to explore and work with data to uncover future opportunities. That being said, our reliance on data requires us to equip our hubs and ourselves with data literacy skills. But the point is, not everyone needs to become a data scientist, and not everyone needs to learn hardcore data science skills to be considered data literate. Data literacy for me is a spectrum of skills, and everyone can actually be proficient at different aspects, which could actually serve as a functional baseline that could allow us to participate and contribute in creating the future of our organization. So, data literacy, bottom line of it is that it's beyond just the ability of us to be able to read data. It's also the ability to drive meaningful information from the numbers. And learning to make sense with data is no longer just a skill for experts, but it is a significant skill for the rest of us. It is an effective means of communication that bridges the gap between data analytics and the hubs and between data scientists and domain experts. So, when we spearhead and promote data literacy, it actually starts with establishing a culture, and leaders need to champion it, believe in it, and promote it, and as well as to live by it. So, second story is about developing a culture in which data-driven mindset can flourish. So, learning to work with data is like learning a new language, but immersing yourselves to the culture brings out the best results. So, creating a data-driven hub or organization starts at the very top. It's when leaders of your organization prioritizes data literacy and actually upskill its workforce while cultivating an outlook that working with data is normal, not novel, or not exceptional. In the context of hub members, it's when we feel encouraged and supported to access, combine, and drive insights from the organization's data. And we are continuously developing that level of confidence in offering creative ways to use data to solve problems, make decisions, and tell stories. So one of the best stories that I can share about building a data culture is Makerspace Manila. So shout out to Gino Carino. Um, Data, particularly in the form of your stakeholders' authentic, relevant, and latent needs, is at the heart of what Makerspace Manila does. So their in-house developed framework, MMHD, short for Maker Mindset Human-Centered Design, is an empathy-based data gathering approach that isn't only embedded to the hub's day-to-day operations, but also on its culture. They extract relevant, gritty, and highly emotional community insights and transform these insights into design parameters to build solutions that address these needs. And just wow, I mean, who would have thought that data could be felt to such a degree that it makes this creative hub and its members develop unique, highly innovative, refreshing strategies workshops, products, and services. This iterative approach has enabled Makerspace Manila to continuously improve and remain relevant until now. So just like Makerspace Manila, there are actually many ways on how we can sustain a culture with data at its core. One, we need to fix basic data issues quickly. Two, we need to rigorously evaluate and contextualize data that comes into our doors. Don't just simply take data at its face value. Doesn't mean it's in a PowerPoint presentation, doesn't mean it's already accurate, valid, reliable, or true. So we need to question it always. Three, use analytics to not just help your customers, but also to help your team by thinking of ways how can we get them excited working with data that it now becomes a choice, not a boring chore. Four, leaders should get into the habit of explaining and asking analytical choices on working with data. As your team or organization, how they approach the problem, what alternative strategies they used, and what they have learned. Five, and I think the most important in building a data culture is that we must make these boundaries between hubs and data science permeable. We shouldn't just pull data analytics closer to our hubs, but we should pull our hubs towards data analytics. So, my third story is about using data as a force for good and making it as a meaningful representative of ourselves. So, addressing real world problems on Earth and in space, the NASA International Space App Challenge Philippines has been collaborating with Manila based Creative Hub Animal Labs in organizing hackathons, mentoring, and incubation programs for coders, scientists, designers, storytellers, makers, technologies, and others in cities around the world to actually develop creative solutions to foster sustainable development nationwide using NASA's free and open access data. So, using data as a force for good and to support sustainable development goal number three, hashtag Pinoy Pride, Philippine Team Project ADES won the best use of data globally by improving public health responses against dengue in the Philippines through predicting dengue cases from climate and digital data and pinpointing possible hotspots from from satellite data rather. So from this story, data shouldn't just become a single source of information, but it should also empower and transform communities and industries. Indeed, data is powerful, but big data plus big ideas is transformational. My mentor once said that the best data science projects are those that are connected to people. So to conclude this presentation is I Lost My Gig Philippines. Shout out to Jody and Pineapple Lab team. I Lost My Gig PH was established to collate data to quantify the devastating impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on independent businesses and the creative industries in the Philippines. So on its June report, there was an estimated income loss of more than $5 million for 5,549 projects lost and 4,458 people were impacted. So this survey report was used as reference to actually breathe life to a privileged speech in the Congress addressing the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the gig economy and the creative sector as well, and also became an inspiration in ideating government action plans and programs for the recovery of the creative industries. So having the opportunity to work as a data analytics volunteer with I Lost My Gig PH team, I realized that to really understand data and its true potential, sometimes we need to forget about them and see through them instead. I Lost My Gig PH created connectedness at a very deep level by relating data to the stories that they represent. They collected, shared, and translated qualitative data into stories, poems, and quotes showing individual hardships from mental health, family ties, basic needs, physical distancing restrictions, and being considered as non essential. So, this data or qualitative data altogether, has painted a picture of a creative community in crisis. When we connect all the stories of all this, at the end of the day, people won't actually remember what happened in your data report, what they saw in the chart, and what you said. But data, they would always remember how you made them feel after. The world we are living in is becoming more digitized, more data centric, and more focused. But we shouldn't lose the curiosity, creativity, and crucial human element that needs to be involved in the data process, which we call data culture. So don't only use data to become more efficient, use it also to become more compassionate. Thank you. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much, Kenneth, for sharing this. Just to recap, there's a lot to be said, but basically what I noticed was that not everybody needs to be a data scientist. There is a spectrum of skills required. The importance of developing a culture where a data-driven mindset can flourish. Data needs to be authentic and relevant, and use analytics to help grow your team, and use data as a force for good. Some extra points where perhaps data literacy needs to be championed by cultural leaders. Using data should be normal, not novel. And data can empower communities, connect your data to people. So thank you very much, Kenneth. We already have some questions for you, and we will be able to bring those questions to you and the other panelists during the Q&A. But now I would like to introduce our next speaker, Sarah Pepper. So Sarah is Director of Creative Economy at Cardiff University with two main leadership roles: Director of Creative City Network, Creative Cardiff, and Chief Operating Officer at Cluster, a research and development project promoting innovation in the Welsh economy. Her role is to provide leadership and strategic direction to these initiatives and to work with a wide variety of stakeholders, including academics, industry, and government partners. Sarah is passionate about championing and developing creative hubs, creative talents and ideas, and brokering partnerships that enable individuals and organizations to realize their full creative and commercial potential. Sarah will share recent initiatives undertaken in the UK, including the Hay Festivals, future trends of creative hubs in Wales, and an overview of Wales' Next Generation Act. Sarah, please welcome. Sarah, welcome.
Thank you for that introduction, Florence. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to you all, to everybody listening and watching. And thank you very much for asking me to be part of this important conversation about reimagining the future of creative hubs. In my role as Director of Creative Economy at Cardiff University, I have had the great pleasure to work with a number of hubs, both in Wales and across the world, to better understand what they do, their operating environments, and how they think and can potentially rethink their work and the ways they work with their communities and other stakeholders. And that's included work in the UK, in Europe, and in Southeast Asia. And I remain fascinated and honoured to work with these spaces and communities. But where do we begin today? Let's locate ourselves in the moment. Now, it's a very obvious statement to make, but so much has changed in the last 4 to 6 months. So much, in fact, that it's hard to understand and contextualize the size and scale of the changes that have already happened and those that are still to come. As creative hubs and leaders of creative hubs and co-working spaces, and most importantly, conveners of communities, I believe it's our role to understand the situation as best we can from this context, to know how it's unfolding and take steps to support our communities and to work with them to try and make them as resilient and effective and indeed ready as they can be for the future. Now, it's not often that we get the chance to stop the world, to rethink and reimagine, either out of necessity or indeed opportunity. But right at this moment, we've been presented with that opportunity. So in terms of reimagining the future of creative hubs, the title of this session today, I'd like to highlight 3 future potential considerations for creative hubs, yes, in Wales, but actually across the world. And these are all gathered from sort of conversations I've had with those leading hubs here in Wales. So the first is about the opportunity to respond to the changing or changed nature of work. So by this, I mean addressing in more detail and potentially rethinking what we're doing for work, how we're doing it, and where we're doing it. We're going through the most significant work rewiring process any of us might have ever imagined, where we are rethinking organizational structures, readapting talent, reimagining careers and job roles, engaging in continuous learning every day, and assessing and reassessing the spaces and places in which we're doing all of this. Creative hubs have a real opportunity here to position all of the social, cultural, and economic benefits available to them and to their communities and the places in which they're located. Creative hubs have an opportunity to be catalysts in defining the changed nature of what work could be in the future and how they can support individuals and organizations during this tricky transition. Within this, they also have the opportunity to address some significant challenges that face the working population, such as loneliness, isolation, health, well-being, and work culture, which have become very, very real as we all work from home or alternative locations, and which are going to be critical as we move through the coming months and years ahead. My second point here is about the importance of continuous improvement and innovation in everything we do. So it's already clear to those that those who will emerge in the best possible position post-COVID-19 are those who have undertaken some kind of consideration of improvement and/or innovation. While policymakers have put in place many measures to try and mitigate the worst impacts of the crisis, every country's longer-term prospects will depend on improving productivity and the health and well-being of their citizens. Now, please note here that I am not suggesting pivoting. Did I say pivoting? Which seems to be the buzzword of the year. Now, whilst this will work for some organisations, it is not a panacea. I am instead highlighting the importance of engaging in, supporting and driving innovation in your communities and places to make well thought through decisions. Don't dilute what you do, reposition it, make it better, build it stronger or more resilient. It's no longer a case of innovate to thrive, but innovate and improve to survive. So I strongly recommend that all creative hubs think about their strategy for doing this and also what mechanisms they have in place to help their communities to do the same. My third point is about supercharging collaboration and engagement with users, with stakeholders, with partners, with funders, with people you know and people you don't. Now, collaboration and engagement may seem like two activities that are very obvious to creative hubs, and indeed, in the main, they are things that hubs do very well. They're in hub DNA, if you like. But I recommend that these need to be amplified, extended, and increased or supercharged in the most open and engaged way possible in order to increase diversity and open accessibility to as many people as possible, and to encourage intercultural dialogue and connectivity wherever and whenever possible. Digital adoption has meant that geographical, physical, and previously access-constrained boundaries have altered. We can now connect with anyone, anywhere, anytime, breaking down a number of barriers. So build locally, think globally, and act thoughtfully when considering what, how, and whom you can collaborate and engage with. And done well, this can create all manner of potential opportunities for hubs for our futures, including greater accessibility, diversity, and inclusion. And finally, connected to all of the 3 points is the potential to be mindful about linking to sustainable development goals. We must consider these opportunities to support a better way of working and living in order to reduce pollution and stress and create communities, towns, and cities that improve the quality of life for their residents and participants in a way that hasn't been possible until now, or we haven't focused upon in this way until now. In Wales, we have the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, made in 2015, which provides us with the ambition, permission, and legal obligation to improve our social, cultural, environmental, and economic well-being. The Wellbeing of Future Generations Act requires public bodies in Wales to think about the long-term impact of their decisions, to work better with people, communities, and each other, and prevent the persistent problems that we have, such as poverty, health inequalities, and climate change. The Act is unique to Wales and has attracted interest from countries around the world, as it offers a huge opportunity to make long-lasting positive change to current and future generations. So I encourage all creative hubs to have a look at this visionary policy for inspiration, but also understand their own policy connected to sustainable development goals and work with what exists or lobby for better. So taking into account all of the above, I'd like to share with you one quick case study that I hope highlights a number of the points that I have made. So the Hay Festival began in 1988 and is a 10-day long literature festival held annually in May in the beautiful town in Hay-on-Wye in Wales. This year, the festival went completely online for the first time ever, altering their delivery model to respond to COVID-19, and as a result, earned close to 500,000 event streams in 2 weeks. Book lovers tuned in from around the world to engage and converse with writers and with each other in a range of interactive events. So they had people tuning in from over 69 countries across the world to join free sessions, and the whole event was presented under the theme #ImagineTheWorld. In addition, after the festival period, events were made available to view on Hay Player, which is home to the festival's content that was produced during the 2 weeks. So Digital Hay was enabled by a relationship with key stakeholder and funder, the Welsh Government, with income opportunities added to through relationships with sponsors and online donations and philanthropic given in several different and new ways for the festival. Now, I chose this example to share as I see it as a really positive example of a creative community in Wales rethinking what the new normal means for them and their audiences. It's about improvement, but not dilution. It's not about completely pivoting, but adapting and embracing digital and keeping users and audiences at the heart of what they were doing and providing support where they needed it. So the Hay team implemented a 24-hour support line for any audience members using their digital platforms who got into trouble and needed support. It's also about quality of content and thinking and positioning of Wales through this visionary title of Imagine the World. It was also about supercharging their relationship with their users and audience members, and at the same time extending their reach to a wider audience, using digital well and making adaptations to resources to enable a more diverse audience to participate. Now, a conversation with the Hay Festival revealed that it just won't be feasible for the festival to go digital for every single one of its events. The team recognised the importance of real-time events and also for their business model. But having made this transition, they will now be well placed to consider a blended model and what that looks like for a future, and to assess with their audiences how they might engage with that in the future. One final thought before I close. COVID-19 will not be the last pandemic or catastrophic global happening. Because of that, we must make careful consideration and smart investments in terms of time, thinking and planning, as well as resources, so that we are as prepared as we can be for an uncertain future. Uncertainty seems to be the new normal, so we need to get comfortable with that. One thing I am certain about is that the importance and potential contribution, value and role that creative hubs, communities of practice and connected networks across the world can provide in an uncertain world. Indeed, they have never been more important than right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sarah. There's a lot to take away, but what really resonates with me, maybe I'll just quickly summarize a few points here. The fact that creative hubs have the opportunity to respond to the changing nature of work, continuous improvement on innovation in everything we do. Collaboration and engagement must be amplified and supercharged. I really like the word supercharged. Wellbeing for Future Generation Act is a uniquely inspiring document that we could potentially all look at, and especially policymakers. And we need to be mindful about the links between our activities and sustainable development goals. And my favorite is uncertainty is the new normal. So we need to get comfortable with that. So really a big thank you, because I know that it's early in the UK, so thank you very much for all this. And now it's time for us to dive deeper into the future with a panel discussion. So I would like to invite Caitlin and our panelists to begin the conversation. Caitlin, the mic is yours.
Hello, everybody. Thanks so much. I was actually wanting to start with the end. Can you say uncertainty is ahead? Actually, I was thinking recently, possibilities are the friends of uncertainty. You know, there's so many possibilities, and the word that Caroline was using, the Chinese word, you know, Wei Ji, which is composed of a danger and an opportunity, and the opportunities are possibilities. So it's been really, really inspiring, you know, to get the three of you to, you know, to have these different perspectives where you're coming from. And it's, you know, that connecting widely, we are doing it here. We are connecting with over 300 people and different perspectives from Malaysia, you know, from the Philippines, from Wales. And I mean, looking at that, it's also how, yeah, governments and civil society and businesses can also digitally be in one place. And I think that has really kind of created a space where all of us can connect so much easier, isn't it? So it's also thinking of what, Kenneth, what you were saying on the 21st century, the data, you know, it's indeed the data should be our friends, you know, but we need to understand more about data, and so that the data, the power of data is not overwhelming us, but actually that we are influencing it through decisions. And, you know, and the importance of working together across sectors. I mean, Sarah, I've been reading through and listening at the Hay Festival about the Wellbeing, you know, the Future Generations Act is just so immensely powerful. I'm really thinking the whole time, what is the creative sector doing out, and what is the creative sector kind of contributing to, you know, the thinking around that, and how can the jewel that is grown in Wales kind of, you know, or that flower maybe flower in other places, or that tree grow in other places. So I'm really, really inspired. And actually I have lots of questions, but I guess I need to, and I see that people online, good questions are really coming in. So I'll just, you know, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to focus on some conversations, getting some conversations going. I mean, the program that we've been doing in Southeast Asia is called Hubs for Good. Now, obviously good can mean a lot of things. I mean, particularly when you look at the challenges ahead, or the current challenges with COVID, with obviously a recession being there, and then on the long term, on the short and long term, the climate change, you know, what does that good really mean? You know, how should hubs prioritize within doing good? You know, who of you feels called to to respond to that first? Wendy, would you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I was just thinking, because there was also some question about, like, you know, what does it means, like, to as a creative hub, like during this new normal, and what I see for now, like,
I think we are losing a little bit.
Can you, hello?
Yeah,
Sorry?
we can't see you. That's fine. Let me just continue.
Yeah, because I think this is a
Digital connection. If not, Wendy? Otherwise we'll...
Of course, like, we are changing, we so sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah. So what I was saying is, you know, currently being creative means taking risks. And so at the moment, this is a time that a lot of creative people and also artists, they're reluctant to take risks. And also somehow, like, the art policy and also the policymaker, they are making, I can't speak for like all the country, but at least the one that I browse by, and also around the world. Seemingly a lot of policy making is kind of geared toward, like, funding the digitized content, but what does it means, like, to the art content and creative content in the public realm? So I think this is the time that we need to reinvent the way that we look at the art, and also we look at the creativity, and really have and also how should it like answer the way. So these are the things that like we discuss a lot in our reading club, and we felt there's a lot of anxiety around the work. So
Right. So how, I think maybe
we live and also the way we work as well. Yes. Hello.
yes, I think
Sorry, maybe I need to switch off my camera so it's better.
perhaps that's a better choice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So thank you, Wendy. And what comes up with you, Kenneth, when you think about, hubs and doing good? I mean, you gave very good examples of how that happens in the makerspace and how data is being used. But if you look at what does actually doing good mean, particularly when you look at environmental, all the different types of challenges, and how do you actually know you're doing good, the impact that you have as a hub?
Okay, so I really want to connect this question in a way of how I really try to navigate both world, data hub and creative hubs. And I've always believed on what William Gibson has said that the future is already here, but it's not evenly distributed. So for me, having the opportunity to work with both data hubs and creative hubs, I think creative hubs are the missing link for us to be able to truly understand or realize everyone's potential to become the 21st century data unicorns. So a data unicorn that isn't only statistically adept, that isn't only good in coding and programming, but someone who is an impact storyteller, a community builder, and a masterful of design and creativity. Because those three are the three things that's lacking to the current data analysts or unicorns that we have today. So data is everywhere. The more that we need to be able to find ways on how to make data unique, contextual, intimate, accessible, understandable, and most importantly, relatable. And having the opportunity to work with the hubs, I know that hubs have this innate superpower of being able to make things less complicated for their communities through effective communication. They were also able to launch programs that bridges the gap, whether it's a skills or knowledge gap about a specific social issue. And hubs doing good for me is really more into being able to create ways on how we can be able to connect data on our live realities, ways in a way that would really provide our communities a unique opportunity for the communities to be able to sharpen their data literacy, to understand the social issues that directly affect their communities, to advocate for social change, and most importantly, to make meaningful civic engagement. So actually, in today's world, there are only 15% data scientists who are female, and there are also we are also experiencing data benefiting from learning data, accessing data, and being able to capitalize on its value. So I think hubs as champion, or as I said, a champion of data literacy or doing for good, they can actually cultivate a culture or the data culture for a more diverse population. And for us to understand that data doesn't only end up only with a pristine expert analysis, but it continues to unfold through community discussion. But for us to be able to create that, it starts with really working with data that you have a contextual knowledge about it, because that's when you feel empowered. Thank you.
And that's of course what hubs do, right? Hubs are
Yes.
very to their contexts, and they are really connecting with communities to feel, the finger on the pulse of what's going on. So it's kind of bringing the best of both together, of
Yeah.
the data analyst, and then the imagination, the visualization, the context, of the hubs to make sense of it. Because as you say, it's not just the data; it's how you analyze and how you get insight around that.
Yeah, and I think it is now the opportunity for us to really map initiatives or certain commonalities between data hubs and creative hubs and see how we can really work together to address specific social issues. because that's already happening in the US and in Africa and other parts of the country. Data hubs and creative hubs are really working together to bridge the gap and to understand social issues better without the need of being too complicated or being too technical.
Exactly, and they could do a lot to influence policies. Sarah, for you, what hubs for good,
Sorry.
and is there any link between the data perhaps that you are looking at in a Wales context and how you've used that, in connection to the creative sector or to the act perhaps too, the Future Generation Act?
Yeah, I mean, Hubs for Good is I really like this title, because I think for those of us who have any connection to hubs, we understand how sort of multifaceted that is for these, if you like, for creative hubs as organizations and as kind of living, breathing communities. Hubs are quite complex and multifaceted. And, I think the Hubs for Good is the key to answering this, I think, is about responding to the environment where the hub is located, because the Hubs for Good will be different in every place, in every context, in every community. There's a lot of discussion at the moment, and I've seen a couple of points actually made well on the chat about local becoming the new normal and very important. And I think, rooting the good in that local community and really getting under the skin of understanding what the needs are, what the complex issues are that need to be addressed, is of primary importance. So I think, that the Hubs for Good is about the hub itself, is about the community that is located within it, but it's also about the place in which that exists. And then you can't not look at place without connecting that to a wider context, can you? I agree we will all be looking local, but we also have to be mindful of that, not just kind of national context, but global context. For example, in Wales, we're part of the United Kingdom. During COVID, we've seen very interesting political differences and approaches to the whole coronavirus situation. So I think the Hubs for Good has to not just, respond to, its environment, but be timely, be current, and keep evolving all the time. I really liked Kenneth's use of the word superpower. I think hubs do have a lot of superpowers, or potentially have, lots of superpowers and ways that they can work together to lever and support that. I think, in terms of good, I think one of the real strengths of hubs and one of the real opportunities at the same time is about the potential to connect with each other. We have the potential to make a global network, and it's already happening in many ways between different hubs. Some work that we did for the British Council, the Connect for Creativity research, looking at creative hubs and the potential for them to support and encourage intercultural dialogue, really highlighted the potential benefits that are available there to hubs using those superpowers, if you like, those convening powers. Really done well, they can definitely do that.
And do you see hubs in Wales actually using data? How do they deal with data for decision making, or are there any examples of that in Wales?
Yeah, definitely. I think we often talk about creative hubs as one kind of homogenous group, and actually they're really not, are they? So we do see some. I think it's really important to just make a note at the moment, because there'll be lots of people leading hubs and working in hubs perhaps on this call today. Hubs are resourced very, very differently and run with very different business models. So it all depends on the resources, the skill set. Sometimes just opening the door is enough. But you're right, there are many hubs, Caitlin, that are using data really, really well. When I was preparing my thoughts for this morning, I spoke to one colleague. We connect with a lot of hubs across Wales. One colleague, Gareth, who runs a number of hubs under the company Town Square. Now, they've gathered some really interesting research together, not focusing specifically on hubs itself, but focusing on our commute. Because actually, the thing about local and the thing about hubs and coming into one place is about what is it about that way that we're traveling to and from our workspaces, and what is the impact of that on the cultural, social, and economic environment of the places that we live in, and how can hubs contribute to that? So they've done a really interesting report. It's not published yet. Otherwise I would have shared it, but I'll certainly put it out on social media in the next few weeks when I know it goes live. But that, you know, that there are some great examples of that. I think there are real opportunities for organizations like mine, like a university, like Cardiff University, to add value to hubs here. And I think that's definitely worthwhile for hubs to work with different further education and higher education individuals to provide some, you know, some analysis of the data. It's quite hard to reflect on things when you're very in it. So I think, you know, there's loads of potential for the academic community, if you like, to do, you know, useful mapping and analysis, contextualization and commentary to help and support the development of creative hubs.
Yeah, I think that probably hubs are often underestimating the power they have or the insights they have. And it's about, you know, how can this, you know, be used more effectively, but also how can they position themselves better? And I guess that's a question I would want to ask to everybody. I don't see Wendy and Kenneth anymore, but that whole thing about policies, you know, currently, obviously the government is very busy with looking at the immediate support. But if we say, you know, the hubs are actually able to almost offer a service, you know, by the data collection, by the insight, what service do you think the governments should offer to the hubs? In which way, what should, you know, what policy should exist or put in place to support hubs? And should that be at national level or at local level? You know, so what's the exchange, the relationship? Because I think hubs can give a lot, but also what are they getting, I guess, as a public, you know, the public realm you talked about, Wendy, but it's actually a public, often a public service that is being done. So do you, I don't know if Wendy, if you are, Wendy, you're there, yes, being very big.
Yeah, because
do you want to react to that, Wendy?
Yes, I do. Yeah, and when I'm referring to the public realm, it not simply means like a tangible space. It also means the, you know, because of course there's.
Are you talking about
How like optimistic like movement or drive through like also means that this kind of action actually means that like the is taking initiative and they are taking risks. And at the moment, a lot of hubs that I know that are trying to drive that and also positive movement, they are not supported by any fund, and a lot of funding is kind of like currently gearing toward like the visual art that can be presented online. So what does it mean like for us collectively? Because I think like for sure we can create like creative product or like art product as an outcome, as a pressure in a sense of visual aesthetic, but or we want to create something contextually meaningful, you know, as a overall correspondence. And I think it's something that like we like policymaker has to actually work with like creative hub to look at like how could we really contribute, because at the moment like I can't speak for all the country around the world, but I think at least like a lot of country like in Asia, somehow the government position themselves as like the parent, you know, the parent of the communities or like the people. So the way that they're distributing the funding or support is kind of assuming that they know better. So I think like how could we work together is something that need to be navigated like during this time as well. Yeah, so it's quite apparent that like a lot of like this kind of support and policy need to be backed by more data and also research. So which is something that like I think as a creative hub, like a lot of creative hub have their own community, and also they've been working with a lot of insight developed. So how could all these insights being delivered into like the policy making process? So I think this is my part.
Yeah, Kenneth, I'm sure you will have some thoughts about that. Data is central.
Yeah, is there a call a friend option? No, I'll answer it. But yeah, going back to the question on how connection of policies and creative hubs at the national and local level. I think if there's something that I can relate to with this one is that when the pandemic and community lockdown began, there are actually a lot of survey research that came out from the government, private sector, and the hubs, which map and measure the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the industry. However, what we can actually notice here is that there's a lack of systematic and structured approach in collaborating, consolidating this data or research efforts, and a unified leadership to actually manage this initiative. So on a personal note, I think we need to further support and try to strengthen the implementation of open data policy that may be already existing in our countries. So when I say support, it's not just only looking at it beyond just making data accessible, but also an opportunity to improve the collaboration among organizations, whether it's government or from the private sector, from the hubs, and also to focus on the impact of the policy through data and how it contributes to better in creating a better data policy or a data strategy. And this could also be a source of inspiration for us to really standardize measures in trying to map out the contribution of the creative economy or creative industries in the economy, and to at least develop, I think it's the most important, to really develop a national registry for the creative sector that would actually serve as not to formalize and at least a safety net for everyone. And last but not the least, it's really to create a culture where democratizing, or did I say the right term, democratizing or publicizing data is actually incorporated in daily working and in daily working processes, and for us to leverage from this data and to add value to our future projects and programs that will actually benefit our creative hubs on a national or local level. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
A lot of very good ideas, you know, and I understand in the Philippines, of course, this has been happening, and there is a good vibe of people working together to, you know, to develop this, which is really interesting, because getting statistics on a sector is very, very hard, you know, and costs lots of money, but the people are actually there to do it, isn't it? And how does that question on policy and advocacy resonate with you, Sarah?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, you know, it's inherent with trying to make any change or move forward in some of the strategic ways that we've been having in this conversation this morning, that a relationship with both local, national and international governments, you know, is vital. That's difficult at a complex time when there are so many things changing and so many things up in the air. But I do think it's incumbent on both, you know, the hubs themselves and the stakeholder agencies and organizations that work across the creative industries and creative sectors to, you know, make a really strong case, make data and information available to policymakers so they understand this. I mean, that's not easy. I think that's the point Kenneth was just making. And, you know, I think there's more resource and thought needs to be put into that, in my opinion. I think there's something very helpful about joining together and collaborating to do that. So in Wales, in South Wales, we've set up something called the Co-working Collective that Creative Cardiff runs. And that's a collective of a number of hubs in the region. And by virtue of coming together to share knowledge and information, we also are able to gather together a picture, a bigger picture. Because if you're just advocating and lobbying on behalf of your one creative hub, that tells one story. But if you can do that en masse and then tell a larger regional picture of a story, then I think that's a different evidence base. And I think that's really a really important thing to do. So I think that kind of, that collaborative approach, that gathering together, and, you know, I think, you know, like I say, I think it is incumbent on hubs, those running them, those leading them, those working in them, and those working with them. For example, like universities, stakeholder agencies, organisations like the British Council, and the British Council do this well, in my opinion, to advocate and explain what we mean by creative hubs. To many, these are still quite a new concept. You know, you know, there's no reason why we should be surprised about that. Just because we're in and, you know, all over them all the time, it doesn't mean that everybody is. But I think in light of COVID, the breadth of the stories that can be told about creative hubs has extended in ways that I think will connect with people differently. And I think those were my 3 recommendations, were kind of about that, actually, to understand what those possibilities are differently, not just tell the story that you know, but stretch it and explain it differently. I think there's real potential there, real opportunity there.
I think it's also important what values are underpinning, obviously, the work that hubs are doing. When you look at the context hubs are working in, very diverse contexts, the information they can gather, the insight they can gather. And I guess the information and the sharing also with, for policymakers can help policymakers also to understand the issues that there are around diversity and inclusion, which obviously are massive challenges right now. So would you see that there is actually necessity for hubs to understand that space better? How you work in more diverse ways or in more inclusive ways?
Absolutely. I think it's incumbent on anybody running any community, any business, anything. I mean, yeah. I don't think this is really an option. I think it's absolutely, incumbent on us all to be mindful of this. So many things have happened in the past. It's not just coronavirus, is it? We've lived through the last 4 to 6 months have been a period of seismic change and alteration on many cultural, social, economic, environmental, just about every factor of life. So I think, I can't stress, you can tell from my response here, I can't stress this point enough, that this is a responsibility for all of us to take, very careful notice of all of this, and not just take notice, but commit to doing things differently. Think about an action plan and ways of collaborating with others to do better, to think, differently, to embrace the opportunities that we have now. I mean, I love the point at the beginning about this Chinese word, which is that mixture of danger and opportunity. I'm going to think on that a lot. I feel like that's where we've all been existing daily, for all the months that we've all collectively been in this. And isn't it an unusual moment? How often is it that just about everybody in the world is experiencing a similar version of something to each other in a really mindful way? It's hard to miss everything that's been going on. So if ever there was a moment of making that shift and really taking on these important opportunities, I think it's now.
And the word collaboration came through all of our conversations, isn't it? If you look, Wendy, I mean, the work you're doing in the borneolab is, you've done it across regions, right? So it's not just very local; it's local and global. I mean, how do you see the collaborations of the future?
I think at the moment, because of this coronavirus, and also if we acknowledge that the fact that pandemic is going to happen more, which we kind of seen across like a lot of research, and because of the climate crisis, and so this thing is going on for quite a while. So if we are not seeing we are not like taking it as a new normal, and kind of like in a denial way, in a denial manner, I think like there will be a lot of problem with the way that we do things. And at the moment, we're still in a phase that like we still have some resources kind of retained from the old normal, and a lot of people are actually finishing off their project and in preparing for like what is the implication in this new normal. So whoever like working in the art sector and creative sector, and like currently a lot of resources is kind of closing down to those kind of like cross-regional collaboration. This is what I felt like looking at the policy in the regionally. And so I think the challenge of that is for the cross-regional like collaboration, if it is not happening in the policy making like level, So what does that means like for the collective or for the creative group to kind of like take initiative and relaunch it in our own scale, yeah, and also like nurture, but at the same time, like all the challenge that we are facing right now is kind of co-shared, you know, and this should have been the perfect time to do collaboration and also to have conversation like this one. So I think like this has to happen more, but I think it has to organize in a very scale. Yeah, so I think not simply the collaboration in the just in the creative scene. I do also agree that like the collaboration should happen among like different sector as well, because like for the last few months during the lockdown, we do see that like, okay, for sure there will be some sector are not doing so well, but there are also some sector they have been like very creative in dealing with the situation. So I think those are the things that we can actually learn from. And I think by doing this kind of collaboration, it will help to nurture like new links as well, and also new resources to look at like how things can be organized. And I think like one good things on during this time is like, in fact, because of the because we if we think that cross-regional collaboration or conversation specifically like is important, in fact we already have most of the instrument, like technological instrument that we need to nurture that. And we've been trying that like for the last few months, doing the online collaboration, online conversation, or even the online workshop. So we've been using like some of the collaborative platform in order to document all the conversation we have. And it's actually, in fact, it's better than you know, in the conventional manner, just because we managed to retain most of the conversation. Yeah, but I think because of this coronavirus like pandemic, people seems to be more open to the idea of like trying it out. So, but I think like at one point, like they probably will be, you know, so I think we have to, in a way, take advantage of like this kind of like curiosity phase, yeah, in order not to be the victim of the next phase, yeah.
Yeah, so cross-sectorial, having an open mindset.
Exactly, yeah.
What are the other things you're thinking about, Kenneth, when you think about collaborations in the future for the creative sector?
Yeah, I think collaboration in the future, we've experienced times where there is social isolation and fear. But what we can actually notice is that our communities are continuously collaborating together to overcome adversity. We have been able to develop a deeper level of community connection and really transform it into acts of compassion and generosity. So aside from that, we are actually seeing emergence of those nearby hyperlocal platforms and neighborhood hubs that actually helps us to address the needs immediately and offer spaces or safer spaces for us to connect and support each other. So aside from that, this challenging times and the emergence of other forms of collaboration has actually helped us to at least foster our collaborative intelligence by being able to at least harmonize human connection and digital platforms to really create opportunities that would at least help our industry afloat and also help our fellow creatives. So I think this might not be the best time to celebrate, but at least
But it's a
pat,
fertile ground.
pat your shoulders for choosing to thrive, to be resilient, to spark creativity, and to at least show kindness. And going back, if collaborations are the future, I think it's more than just collaboration, but we can actually see it more of a form of hyper collaboration. Like we are really expanding our reach to tap other organizations or communities that we might haven't collaborated with before. And that for me, it makes the collaboration more magical, because sometimes the people who we rarely or never work with might be the people who can actually help us to solve complex challenge that we are facing. So above all these collaborations and into the data perspective, take this also as an opportunity to analyze your current networks or community networks and try to think of ways on how we can further leverage greater value from it to empower and transform our communities and industries.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, do you have anything to add on that, on collaboration?
Not a great deal, I think. Really well made points there, Kenneth. I mean, I suppose the only thing I would add, and I made this point in my presentation, but it's so important, I think it needs to be made again, which is about collaborating, and this builds on what Kenneth says, collaborating with people you know and people you don't know. That's not just gives business benefits, but, you know, makes it more interesting and gives more potential. But actually, you know, we're at the moment where we need to think very carefully about diversity and inclusion. And we know that organizations and communities that embrace that and engage with that and build, you know, a diverse and open and inclusive and accessible environment, you know, can have all sorts of benefits and good things to come from that. So I think that is such an important consideration in the next phase for everybody, no matter where they are, no matter, you know, I say hubs aren't a homogenous group. With this particular comment, it relates to everybody. And I think that's going to be absolutely key in the future. And as is doing everything in a very human way, you know, hubs are about people, communities are about people. And I think we must remember that when everything's frightening and scary and different and changing, you know, I suppose it goes back to the danger and opportunity, but also remembering, you know, that we're all human in this. And that's of vital importance.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. I think hubs are this node of relationships, and I think relationships. I heard that on a webinar last week, that we are moving from a kind of commodity economy to a relationship economy, between brackets. So it's hubs are in that. So I think we need to open up the floor, and I just have one question for everybody that you can go with tonight: is if there would be a virtual wishing tree, what would you wish for your hub? But let's see what questions. I've been seeing the thread going with lots of questions, so I hand over to Florence to see what.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists for this very insightful session. So we'll now open the floor for about 20 minutes for questions from the audience. If you have a question, you may use the raise hand function or place your question in the chat. By the way, I just wanted to highlight to you as well that Facebook Live is going on, is happening, and we've got a number of participants who have also sent their question, and we are going to try to address them here. So the first question I have is actually for Kenneth, and it's on data. I'm sorry, I did not get who wrote this, but this is for you, Kenneth. How do you propose to minimize biases in data gathering to make the data reliable and true?
Okay, I'll answer that. Okay, first is that it all starts with having a very clear data collection plan. I think it's all rooted that the reliability, the validity, and the accuracy of data would always be anchored on how strong your data collection plan is. And for some other approaches, for example, we need to make sure that um, the sources or the information sources that we are using are also reliable. We need to also ensure that we align or review the parameters and metrics that we are using. And aside from those metrics, we should also communicate with our research team or community the importance of the value of making data valid, reliable, and accurate. And I think one thing that we often forget is that we need to somehow be neutral or to remove ourselves whenever we analyze data, because I think that's when biases really come from. And also, you need to also look on how your questions are really constructed in the survey design. Like, is it too leading to the answers that you want to get? Yeah, I think that's it. And in terms of accuracy or reliability or data as being true, one thing that I've learned when I was 16 and handling research projects is that 100% accurate data is something that's really rare to happen. Usually, there is really around 95% or 99% data accuracy, and that is already a timely and useful, consistent data that we can actually use for policies and decisions. I hope I
Great.
have answered your question.
Thank you so much, Kenneth. The next question is actually for Wendy. So somebody wants to know, Wendy, what are you going to do with your collection of hope expression? I suppose this is referring to the tree.
Canvas of hope. Yeah,
Yeah,
the canvas of hope and the wish tree.
Yes,
Yeah,
and also a secondary question to that is, are there other initiatives related to what you are doing in Malaysia?
Yes. Okay. So to answer the first question, like in fact, we are collecting like the hope in the written form, like from the community. So with that project, we are going to like put it on the social media and also in the actual space, like so then we can develop a project that is in compliance with the social distancing policy. Because I think one thing that we do want to test, like with this process, is like how could in the new normal, like we still like doing the project that is like kind of like can be contributed by the community. So it's basically a participatory model that we want to test out, like during this unprecedented time. Yeah. So with that project, like of course, like we will retain the outcome of this project and it will keep on growing. So the trees, we do hope that it will grow bigger and bigger, like so because we're going to keep it in our new space. And the same thing like with the canvas as well. So it will be a canvas that like we hopefully will get the recipients. And in fact, it's not simply like we are not simply collecting the wishes or the hope like from the local story as well. We do want, because since it is omni-channel like project anyway, so we will put it online. And so anyone who are interested, you can go to our website, and then like you will find the link to contribute your story to the project. So then it is in a way like we can hopefully like grow the trees and the canvas. And in regarding to the second question, like there's a few, I would say, like because in a way what we are doing is a cluster of like various initiatives. So some of the initiatives, like for example, the food growing one, is actually linked to like the permaculture, and some of if you look at like some of our past projects, we also have been upcycling like the like some discarded material, like for example the plastic, and harvesting the plastic waste from the sea and then convert it into building material. Yeah, so these are the things that like we always work with different group of people to look at like solution. So I think this is also how we see Hub as well. It's not simply about like a gathering of people, but also like how could we set out like possibility and also new implication of like how we can make future a more positive like place to be in. Yeah, I hope that answer.
Great, thank you so much. Thank you, Wendy. Now we have a question for Sarah. Is there a case study report on the Hay Festival Digital? And could you share your experience about how Wales managed to institute the Wellbeing of Future Generation Act? And what are the key highlights and how it has been used?
Okay, so as far as I'm aware from my research, I didn't see a case study written up about hay, but it would be an interesting thing to do. I gained a lot of my information about it by having a look online, and I actually rang and spoke to somebody there to find out more information, but there's nothing I can point you to directly. But I guess if you'd like more, you could perhaps get in touch with the organisation themselves.
Sure.
In terms of the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act, Florence, can you just confirm the two questions relating to that, please?
Sure. So share experience about how Wales managed to institute the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act. What are the key highlights and how it's been used?
Okay. Now, I'm not exactly clear on it, because it was 2015 that the Wellbeing of Future Generations Act was passed. And I'm not entirely sure of the process that led to it coming together. But I guess what's important to share about it, and it was in the slide, but it's on the website as well. I know that the link was shared with the community listening today. That the Wellbeing of Future Generations has Act has a number of different pillars. It's sort of 7 or 8 pillars that talks about a more equal Wales, a healthy Wales, a resilient Wales, a prosperous Wales, a responsible Wales, a vibrant culture and Welsh language in Wales. So it's a very interesting piece of policy that connects to lots of different parts of Welsh life. In terms of how effective it is, in the time that it's been live, I think that the Act was passed and we have a future Wellbeing of Future Generations Commissioner who has a team that works with her, and they work with a lot of publicly funded, in fact, all the publicly funded organisations to implement new ways of working and developments based on those different pillars that I was talking about, under which the Act is constructed. I mean, I think in terms of an anecdotal response, I think, you know, it's really visionary policy making this, you know, and, you know, past 5 years ago now, you know, Wales is definitely through this upping its game and making a committed contribution to thinking about public life and the way that public money is spent and how it connects to sustainable development goals. So I think it's something that many of us in Wales are very proud of. I think we've got more to go in terms of having this implemented in the work of all private sector organisations here and in all third sector organisations as well. But it's a start and it's a framework, and I think it's you know, I think there's a lot about it that we can be very proud of as a country's commitment to this way of thinking and working and to the future of life in Wales.
Great, thank you. So we have another just under 10 minutes. We've got another question for actually any of the 3 of you or all of you, if you all want to contribute. Here it goes. How is your government supporting creative hubs in your country to survive the pandemic? And if you think support is not enough, what do you think is holding them back from doing more? Wendy, that one is for you.
I think I mentioned like a couple of times just now about the policy maker, because I think on their side, they are dealing with a lot of uncertainty, and it's understandable, like they are reluctant to do so. But at the same time, I think like us as Creative Hub, I don't want to say like, okay, we should push like policy making to be only the proactive one, like in this entire equation, because at the end of the day, like us as individual or as organization or either like or the policymaker, like we all need to like really think about like how to deal with this new normal. And like for sure, like what we can like at the moment with the Creative Hub or need to do is actually to look at like what is our role as a creative hub to deal with this kind of situation, and what can we provide really. And I think it's the same thing with policymaker as well, because it's like their role is actually in a way, because of this pandemic, I think like there's a lot of new implication, and some of them are actually like shaken. So I think they are also anxious about the new future as well. But I think like from with dealing with a lot of uncertainty, dealing in the community scale or in a collective scale, like so how could we like offer answer, not necessary to everything, but like to certain aspect of what we have been dealing with, like day-to-day basis, or in a local region. So I think like this is something that for sure policy making, like if they can support that kind of like initiative, I think that will be a meaningful one, because I think that's also helped to path their new role in the new normal as well, but they have to work together. So rather than saying like, oh yeah, the only answer is a monetary fund, but I think it's really identifying what should be done.
Right, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know, Kenneth, Sarah, would you like to chip in on this, or should I move on to the next question? Yeah, okay.
I think a quick point from me, from conversations with our members of the co-working collective. And it goes back to my point about not all hubs being a homogenous group. Some hubs have cafes, therefore, you know, they can be perceived under kind of retail or catering or, you know, so for governments to deal with these spaces or to deal with creative hubs, you know, unfortunately with the situation we've been in, governments have set up funds where you have to fit into certain boxes. And, you know, hubs don't necessarily do that. And with them all being so different, it's quite, I think it's been a challenge to really understand what support is available for them as they do operate so differently. I think there's a bigger picture issue here, which is about governments understanding models of creative hubs and what they do and the impact they have, not just from an economy perspective, but from a cultural and social perspective. So I think that's the issue here rather than the coronavirus response per se.
Well, maybe that's for some of the hubs. It's also an opportunity to perhaps apply for other things that are not necessarily for creative hubs, but yeah. We'll move on to, I think we have time for one more question, yeah? So it's about hubs identity, and it's to all of you. How do hubs protect themselves and their communities during a crisis without closing them off from other communities? In the future, what will hub identity be like? Do you see them as a sector block or, do you see them as a sector block or unique entities? Who would like to take that last question?
Go on,
Wendy.
Go ahead, Sarah, go ahead.
We can take both of you.
Say, it kind of goes back to my point about homogenous groups. For me, one of the things that I'll use Kenneth's terminology, one of the superpowers that hubs have is are their similarities, but most importantly, their differences, and how they're different to respond to and provide services to the communities that they're based in and to whom they work with and you know, provide services to. So if the question is about how will identities change here, I suppose, you know, my thought on that would be that keeping that unique identity is really, really important for hubs. They, you know, that's what is there, that is what is unique about them. And I think, you know, in terms of identity, perhaps this relates back to many things we've talked about this morning, but one is about, you know, being really responsive to that community. And actually going back to one of the points that I made in my presentation, I don't think this is about changing everything. This isn't about pivoting and radically doing something massively different. It's about reconsidering and regrouping and rethinking and, you know, working with others to build better, not necessarily better, but build back in a way that, you know, provides a future and an opportunity. So I'd say in terms of identity, don't put the baby out with the bathwater. This isn't a time to radically change everything, but I think it is a time to carefully reflect upon and be mindful of what the global situation is or your local situation is.
Great, thank you so much. I think that it is now time for us to move on to the next and final presentation of today. So from our feedback and conversations that we've gathered since the crisis started in countries, we know that most of the hubs are open and seeking ways to collaborate. However, coming together is not always an easy task. Who are the connectors? What are successful models of collaborations? How do we match offer and demand? And can the British Council play a larger role in this area? So I now call upon Caitlin to share ongoing initiatives by the British Council. Caitlin, please go ahead.
Thank you. I just wanted to see in the chat, I really like Adelaide Lim's comment. Hello, Adelaide. Cooperation is a more complex form of creativity than competition. So I think, you know, collaboration is all about, as we discussed before, you know, diversity, complementarity, you know, and looking out of your comfort zone in connecting with others. So the survey, very interesting. So 267 people of 20 countries have responded to the survey. We did prior to the forum, as you know, it's a very nice spread, I think. On the question, are you open to collaborate with others? We can actually see that 70% mentioned they're open to collaboration internationally and regionally, and which is actually great to see. And then while just over 50%, it's kind of half of the rest, is local, and some people undecided or not particularly interested. The next slide, actually, it's about the areas of collaboration, and that's very even, around the broad, around community, cultural mentoring programs, business collaborations, and others. I wonder what the others would be. And then the last one is looking at, of the 267, you could see that 180 people, thought that obviously funding, but also ideas are almost, equal in importance, for collaborations. And the rest, interesting digital training. And then the last interesting is the platform over websites, collaboration platforms, sorry. So that's very interesting, and that's good food for thought also for us to look at, how we are thinking about it, and we can have a further reflection on that later. So if we move on to, we've been continuing to work in the best possible way also as the British Council with our partners on this Hubs for Good program in the last 3 years actually. And we just wanted to share a bit of the work that we've been doing recently, and our wonderful colleagues in Malaysia, Florence and the team, and Eric and Jaza. So they've been working together with the University Malaya, and also co-funded by the Sam Darby Foundation on this initiative of Creative Hubs for Good website. Now it's going to be launched in the 1st of September, and I think about 100 hubs already kind of being listed on there. It's really about a resource platform, research and sharing reports. And I think, after having discussed today, I think many new ideas will come up, I'm sure, between the Malaysian hubs on how they could use the platform to the best, for blogs, for, collaborations and opportunities, and looking at advocacy too, and using that tool, to share also with government partners. And it's obviously for everybody who's interested in that space, because creative hubs, as you were saying, Sarah, it's a broad spectrum, and actually, getting more people to understand it is absolutely crucial to research it and to connect to it. So that's what Malaysia is doing. And then perhaps just a question to plant with you, you can type it in the chat, your answer. I mean, do you think that such a platform, could be expanded regionally? Is there a need for that? And would you use such a site as a place for collaboration? So if you could put that in the chat, that would be great. So that's a bit of feedback for us. So the next one is our colleagues in Thailand, Jay and Om and Nu, working on the social innovation hackathon, again with partners, the Urban Studies Lab. That's a think tank which is aiming to solve urban issues through placemaking and community development. And then the FREC, or the Ford Resource and Engagement Center, that's a hub supported by the Ford Motor, and that's providing space and funding for NGOs and CSOs working in the area of urban development. So it's a very interesting collaboration. And it's really about, as you can read, the promotion of the role of hubs in livable cities for social innovation. I think, the hackathon will be done in one of the oldest neighborhoods in Bangkok, with lots of cultural, context and social urban issues. So there is an underground train project that is happening there, but with a very, very strong local community, and the partners are based there, and they've done extensive research. So again, the context. And then they have great relationships. We talked a lot about relationships today with the local people. So there are 4 hubs, and from Thailand, and 2 hubs from the UK who've been working already together through online exchanges and meetings and briefings. And they have proposed ideas, and that will then turn into a series of meetings that will be conducted online. And then the hackathon is actually taking place in November. So obviously it's not possible to travel. So this will all happen online, and that's perfectly possible. and then the winning team will get, you know, funding to implement the project. And it is connected to, obviously, to COVID, how the damages done to the community for COVID, through COVID. So they will revisit, these hubs will revisit the, you know, the context, and they see how they can best support the community to be, you know, to be more resilient. So it's an exciting program in Thailand. And the question, I guess, could be, you know, is there an interest? Would this type of activities like hackathons, could they be replicated in your country? I think, Kenneth, that you mentioned in the Philippines a hackathon in the past, but it'd be great if you have a reflection on that, put that in the chat. And then the last is actually your colleagues in Africa. You know, the British Council actually has Creative Hubs programs in quite some parts of the world, you know, in wider Europe and in Africa, and in our colleagues there have been working with the communities and with the hubs, and also with Nesta, as also an organization we worked with in our region, and with HIVOS with over 100 hubs in sub-Saharan Africa. And they focused on the skills development and mentorship, and they've been also bringing that in online retreats. And that's, you know, it's possible to do that, and it's been really leading, you know, in Africa to a lot of new collaborations and new understanding between hubs. So what would be interesting here is that, you know, we have the possibilities, as you can see, to link with an amazing group of hub leaders in Africa. And what I've learned in these kind of online webinars is that so many new connections are being made, you know, maybe through forums, but then obviously the question is, how do you take it the next step, you know, to actually real collaborations? And that's, in the past 3 sessions now, well, today in the last 2, they were really, really good ideas, you know, that coming up, and new business ideas or reflections, like today, a reading group. I mean, wouldn't it be wonderful to have an online reading group? We talked a lot about data literacy, maybe there is something in there. So there are, I think, lots of ideas coming up, and it would be great to hear again from you. You know, there will be a feedback form, and, you know, asking you to, before you sign off, to connect with that. But it's kind of looking at, what do you think we as the British Council can help, you know, in potentially helping you with the connections on setting up digital workshops, and what would they be, you know, in your view, be focusing on? So that would be really great, because from exchanging, it would be great to get into the action, you know, that we talked about at the beginning, not the think, the connect, the think, the analyze potentially, but also the act together. So it would be great to hear more about that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Caitlin. As you said, the British Council is very keen to continue fostering collaborations amongst creative hubs, and we would like to work with you towards that goal. So we've arrived at the end of our event, and before we all say goodbye, I just want to very quickly give you maybe 6 points to recap. So we talked about a stronger collaboration between and amongst hubs and their communities, as well as different sectors at local and cross-regional levels, in one way, to build resilience and to overcome adversity. The point number 2 is the importance of developing a culture where data-driven mindset can flourish, ensuring that data needs an authentic and relevant. Be critically reflective and use informed thinking to create new narratives and solutions that respond to today's challenges. Hubs should be engaging, supportive, and driving innovation in order for themselves to survive, but also for their community's survival. Supercharge collaboration and engagements, build locally, think globally, and act thoughtfully. And finally, the potential for hubs to use their superpowers, their convening powers, to drive intercultural dialogues and driving hyper collaborations that build relationship with diversity, inclusivity at the heart. So these are the key summary points that we can take from today's conversation. So what is the next step? So the British Council will be working at country level to create the new activity post forum series and we want to do something that would be useful for all of you. So please do share your ideas with your British Council local arts team, or expect them to contact you soon. We've put together a resource deck which compiles webinar reports and other extremely useful and practical information on resilience, sustainability, and adaptation. This document will be sent to you after the forum. We also have an event feedback form that you can access via the QR code on the screen or on the link in the chat. We would like to know your thoughts and comments of today's events. So please take some time to complete it before you sign off. Finally, I would like to thank our speakers, partners, and you, the audience, for sharing your stories and positive energy today. I personally wish to thank my colleagues from the region, the arts team members in the Philippines, Indonesia, Thailand, and the UK. I would like to thank Sarah, Kenneth, and Wendy especially, and Caroline, who took her day off from her leaves to be with us today. So a special thanks to all of you. And finally, final word promise. I would like to thank Shaza from Malaysia, and especially my colleague Erica, because Erica has been working on the last 3 forums, and she's worked very late hours in the night to make this possible. So thank you so much, Erica. And I wish you all a very good day and stay safe. Thank you. Goodbye.